I've always believed the stage was where I came alive, where I ceased to be a woman weighed down by responsibilities and became someone else entirely. Someone radiant, untouchable, free. It's ironic, isn't it? That in a place built for fantasy, I found my truth. My name is Elena. I'm 38, a mother, a wife, at least technically, and a dancer. Not the kind you see in studios with ballet shoes and soft lighting, but the kind who moves through shadows and silk, beneath chandeliers and watchful eyes, in a club where secrets linger like perfume. It's not a place for the timid. It's a place for the powerful, the wealthy, the untouchables who come to lose themselves for a few hours in velvet darkness. I dance for them, and I dance for me. My husband despises it. The club, the dancing, the fact that I bring home more money than he ever has. He says it's not real work, that it makes him feel like less of a man. But what he doesn't understand, what he's never tried to understand, is that dancing saved me long before I met him. It gave me a sense of self when the world tried to take everything else. It's not just a job. It's who I am. We barely speak these days, my husband and I. We share a house, a name, a son, but not a life. Not really. The space between us is filled with cold dinners and unanswered texts. When he touches me, it feels like obligation. And when he doesn't, it feels like resentment. But then there's Luca, my son. He turned 18 last month, and every time I look at him, I see flashes of the boy he was and the man he's becoming. He's tall now, taller than his father, with the same restless energy I once had. His room is a symphony of beats and rhythm. Hip-hop blares through the walls most evenings, and I smile when I hear it. It's in his blood, I think, the movement, the pulse. He hasn't said it outright, but I see it in the way he watches choreography videos, the way he moves when he thinks no one is watching. He got that from me. He knows I'm a dancer, of course. But we've never talked about the details. Not really. I'm not sure he understands what kind of dancing I do. He's never asked and I've never offered. Maybe he doesn't want to know. Or maybe he already suspects and is just waiting for the right moment to bring it up. I dread that moment. Because what do I say? How do I explain the silk robes and stiletto heels? The way I command a room full of powerful men who would never dare speak to me in daylight? How do I tell my son that his mother is more alive under stage lights than in her own home? One evening, I came home early, unusual for me, and found him in the living room, head bobbing to a beat in his headphones. He looked up, startled. For a second, we just stared at each other. Me, in my dark jeans and leather jacket, makeup still smudged from the stage. Him, in a hoodie and joggers, eyes wide like he was seeing me for the first time. "You're home early," he said. "Yeah," I replied, shrugging out of my jacket. Slow night. He studied me for a beat too long. Was it a show night? I paused. Always is. Something flickered in his eyes. Curiosity? Concern? I couldn't tell. He didn't push it further, and I was grateful. I didn't want to lie, but I wasn't ready to tell the whole truth either. Later, I watched him from the hallway, his silhouette moving with quiet intensity to the rhythm of a beat only he could hear. His arms, his steps, the fluid sway of his body. It was art, raw and unrefined. I felt something ache in my chest. Pride, mostly, and a strange, bittersweet longing for a time when everything between us was simple. I wonder if he knows how much of my heart he carries. I wonder if he sees the ways I'm unraveling. Sometimes, when the house is quiet and the shadows stretch long across the walls, I imagine telling him everything. Not just about the club, but about the dreams I buried and the woman I almost forgot how to be. I imagine him understanding, not judging, just listening. Maybe one day he will. Until then, I dance. For strangers. For myself. And maybe, just maybe, for him too. The next evening, I came home later than usual. It had been one of those nights, the kind where the energy on the stage felt electric, where the crowd hummed with desire and danger. One of the regulars, a man who wears a senator's face by day and something darker by night, had requested me for a private set. The kind where words aren't spoken but messages are delivered in the flick of a wrist, the curve of a back, the tilt of a gaze. I left the club with his words in my ear like perfume. You know exactly how to disappear and be unforgettable.
He was right.
On that stage, I vanish, but I also come alive. But as I stepped into my dimly lit kitchen, the illusion shattered. The scent of warmed leftovers greeted me. Someone had reheated dinner. My heels clicked softly on the tiles as I stepped into the hallway. There, at the end of the corridor, was Luca. He stood in front of the open refrigerator, shirtless, drinking orange juice straight from the carton like he used to when he was 12. The dim light from the fridge cast golden shadows on his bare shoulders, now strong and defined. He turned when he heard me. "Hey," he said, his voice low and a little groggy. I smiled tiredly, dropping my bag by the door.
"Hey."
"Couldn't sleep?" He shook his head, replacing the carton. "Too much on my mind." I knew the feeling. I sat on the couch and leaned back, closing my eyes for a moment. I heard him shuffle into the room. Then the couch shifted as he sat beside me. There was a pause. "You look tired," he said softly. "Rough night." "Not rough. Just intense." I opened my eyes to find him watching me. There was something in his gaze, an awareness, maybe, or simply an unspoken question. "You ever gonna tell me what it's really like?" he asked, not accusing, just curious. I exhaled slowly. "It's not something you talk about over dinner, you know? I'm not a kid anymore." That made me look at him. He wasn't wrong. He leaned back, folding his arms behind his head, eyes on the ceiling. "I get it. You love it. The way you come home, like you've just stepped out of another world. I can see it in your eyes." That stopped me cold. I didn't realize it showed. He smirked faintly. "I watch people. It's what dancers do, right?" I turned my head toward him, studying his profile. "You really are like me." He met my gaze, eyes soft. "I always have been." A long silence settled between us. Not uncomfortable, but heavy with things neither of us dared to say. I could feel the beat of his music still in his blood, the echoes of the club still humming in mine. Two dancers, two lives, two truths existing side by side under the same roof. "You know," he said eventually, "I used to think it was weird that you danced for strangers, that men paid to watch." I stiffened, but he continued. "But now, I think it's powerful. You make people feel something. You control the room. That's more than most people ever learn how to do." I blinked, something warm flooding my chest. "You don't think it's shameful?" He turned to face me. "Do you?" "No," I whispered. "Never." "Then why should I?" I didn't know what to say to that. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows, like the world was reminding us that it was still there, still watching. Luca stood then, stretching lazily. "I'm working on something," he said, changing the subject. "A choreography. Something new. You want to see?" My lips curved despite the ache in my legs.
"Now."
He nodded. "Why not?" I followed him into the living room, where he pushed back the coffee table and cued up a beat. It was raw, pulsing, hypnotic. And then he moved, sharp, fluid, fierce. There was no hesitation in him, only fire. I watched, transfixed. It was like watching a reflection. When he finished, he turned to me, chest rising and falling. "What do you think?" My voice caught. "You were born for it." He grinned, boyish and proud. "I learned from the best." I felt something shift inside me then, something I didn't yet have words for. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the first crack in the wall between the two versions of myself, Elena the mother, Elena the dancer. Or maybe it was the beginning of something else entirely. "Now it's your turn," Luca said, stepping back with that teasing glint in his eyes. He wiped sweat from his brow with the edge of his shirt, then folded his arms and leaned against the wall, expectant. I laughed, trying to brush it off. "Oh no. That was your show, honey. I'm just the audience now." He grinned. "You said I got it from you. Let me see." I hesitated. My heart thumped with an unfamiliar nervousness. Performing for a room full of strangers under dim lights and velvet shadows? Easy. But showing myself here, in our living room, under the soft golden glow of a floor lamp, with my son watching, eyes bright with anticipation. That was something else entirely. You're serious? I asked. He nodded once, more sincere now. I want to see the real you. His words struck something deep inside. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and let go. The music was still playing, slow, moody, laced with rhythm. I took a step forward, lifting my arms in a way that felt natural, like second nature. My body remembered, even if my mind resisted. I moved slowly at first, letting the tension slide off my shoulders as I twisted and turned, letting the beat guide me. I didn't hold back. Not entirely. But I softened the edges, smoothed the heat into something elegant. Fluid. When I turned back toward him near the end, I caught the look on his face. His jaw was slightly open, and he was blushing. A flush had crept up his neck, coloring his cheeks. His gaze wasn't the wide-eyed admiration of a child watching his mother. It was something more complex, more adult, like he was trying to make sense of something he'd never seen before. I lowered my arms and stood still, suddenly self-conscious. Luca? He blinked, then looked away quickly.
Sorry. Wow.
You're incredible. I felt heat rise to my own face. I'm still me, you know. I know, he said quickly. I didn't expect that. You move like I've done this a long time? I offered, trying to ease the awkwardness. He let out a breathless laugh.
Yeah.
Exactly. We sat down after that, the air between us quiet, but not empty. He was looking at me differently. Not just with admiration, but with new awareness. It wasn't uncomfortable, not yet, but it was charged, fragile. I tucked my hair behind my ear. You okay? He nodded, not meeting my eyes. Yeah, just thinking. About. He was silent for a moment. Then, it's weird. I've always known you were strong, but I didn't realize how much you hold back. That stopped me. He continued, softer now. You dim yourself, Mom. Around me. Around Dad. Around everyone. But when you dance, it's like you're untouchable. My throat tightened. I guess I never thought about you having this whole world that doesn't include me, he said. And seeing it now, it's overwhelming. I reached over, placing a hand on his. It's not about leaving you out, Luca. It's about having something that's mine. He nodded, finally meeting my eyes. I get that. A long pause passed between us. Then he said, very quietly, I think that's what makes it so hard to look away. My breath caught. We didn't say anything else that night. Just sat there, shoulder to shoulder, staring at the dim TV screen, letting the silence settle around us. But something had shifted, and I wasn't sure either of us knew how to shift it back. The days that followed our little dance exchange were quieter, more charged. Luca didn't bring it up again directly, but I could feel his eyes on me, more curious, more aware. Something had shifted, not just in how he looked at me, but in how I looked at him too. It was a quiet Thursday evening when he asked the question. We were sitting in the kitchen, the air filled with the faint scent of chamomile tea and the low hum of lo-fi beats playing from his phone. He stirred honey into his mug, then looked at me without lifting his head. What's it called? The place you dance. I paused mid-sip, the question landing like a soft thunderclap. I didn't answer right away. I watched him. The way he kept his tone casual, how he avoided my eyes, but also how still he sat, like he was bracing for something. It doesn't have a sign, I said carefully. It's private. Invite only.
He looked up at me then.
So, it's exclusive. I nodded.
Yes.
Very. I hoped that would be enough. That the word exclusive would be a gate he wouldn't try to unlock. But I could see it in his face. The wheels were already turning. You ever think about bringing someone there? To show them what you do? I placed my mug down slowly, my pulse skipping. It's not really that kind of place, Luca. His brow furrowed. But people bring dates, right? Clients. Friends. I hesitated. Sometimes. But only people who understand what it is. And what is it? He asked, his voice soft. My breath caught. He was asking for more than just a definition. He wanted to be let in. Not just into the club, but into the part of me I had always kept walled off from the world. It's a place where people escape, I said finally. Where they don't have to be seen as who they are by day. And neither do I. He nodded slowly, processing. So, it's more than just dancing. I looked at him and said the quiet truth. Yes, it's a performance, but also a release.
For them.
And for me. He didn't ask anything more, but I saw the flicker in his eyes, that unmistakable flicker of wanting to understand, of wanting to see me in that world. I felt a tightness build in my chest, a mix of fear and anticipation. Then, just as suddenly, the tension snapped. It was later that week. A stormy night. The kind where the wind howled through the windows and the rain painted the glass in soft, rhythmic lines. We were all home. The three of us. I had just come back from the club, hair still pinned, perfume still lingering, the shimmer of glitter faintly dusting my collarbone. My husband took one look at me from across the living room and scoffed. You're proud of this? He said loudly, standing up. Walking around like that? Like some... Don't, I warned, my voice sharp. But he wasn't finished. You're a mother, not some fantasy on a stage. How long do you plan to keep playing pretend before you finally grow up? His words sliced through the air.
Cold.
Precise. Before I could react, before I could draw in a breath to defend myself, Luca stood. His face was stone. His eyes dark. Say that again, he said, voice low and deadly. My husband laughed bitterly. What, you going to defend her? You think this is normal? I think she deserves respect, Luca snapped. Which is more than I can say for you. He took a step forward, his hands clenched at his sides. There was fire in him, raw, protective male. No longer the playful son who cheesed me during dance videos or sneaked chips from the pantry. This was a man. My husband raised his voice again, but it was drowned by Luca's fury. For a terrifying second, I thought he might actually hit him. Stop, I said, stepping between them. I could feel Luca's heat behind me, the tremble in his chest as he breathed, heavy with restraint. I placed a hand on his arm, and he looked down at me, his eyes softening just slightly. My husband turned, grabbed his coat from the hook, and slammed the door behind him. The silence that followed was deep. Long, unforgiving. I turned back to Luca. He was still trembling, his face flushed. You didn't have to do that, I whispered, though my heart ached with gratitude. I did, he said simply. He doesn't see you, but I do. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. My hands were still on his arms, his warmth anchoring me. For a moment, I didn't know who was protecting whom anymore. All I knew was this. The line between us was no longer clear, and neither of us seemed ready to redraw it. When he wrapped his arms around me that night, after the storm with my husband, and whispered into my ear, "You're in good hands, my girl," I felt something in me unravel. The words were simple, almost casual, but it was the way he said them, steady, quiet, close. Like a promise. Like a truth I didn't know I needed. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, his voice echoing in my mind. The way his arms had felt secure, strong. The gentleness of those words contrasted sharply with the chaos of everything else. The resentment from my husband, the questions that lingered in the air between Luca and me, and the way I was beginning to feel when he looked at me, not as a child looks at a parent, but as a man looks at someone he's starting to truly see. The next night at the club, I did what I always did. I slipped into my other skin. The crowd was different that evening. Bigger. Buzzing. I recognized faces, politicians, producers, people who lived in headlines. I felt eyes on me from every corner, some familiar, some new. But when the last dance began, something happened that shattered the illusion. I saw him. There, in the shadows near the back, dressed in black. A tailored shirt, dark slacks, no tie. He looked older, elegant, dangerously calm. My breath caught. I looked again.
And again.
It was him, Luca. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just watched. And in his eyes, I saw something that nearly undid me.
Pride.
It was silent, unspoken, but it was there, stronger than anything I'd felt from my husband in years. That subtle lift of his brow, the glint in his eyes. He wasn't ashamed. He wasn't judging. He was admiring. When the dance ended, I almost forgot to bow. Outside, I found him waiting in the courtyard, leaning casually against the brick wall like he belonged there, like he'd been waiting all his life. He stepped forward, took my hand, and lifted it to his lips. "I'm amazed," he said, his voice like velvet. "My father will regret every word he's ever said to you. And now, I understand. What keeps you here? It's attention." He looked at me, not just at my face, but into it, as though he could see through the layers I wore like armor. And in that gaze, I felt warm.
Seen. I didn't know what to say.
My throat was tight. My heart thudded like a drum. He smiled faintly. "In a week, you'll have a surprise." I blinked. "A surprise?" He leaned in slightly. "In a week, it's your birthday, remember?" I laughed softly, caught between disbelief and wonder. "You remembered?" "I remember everything," he said. And he did. Because when that day came, he didn't just give me flowers or a card. No, Luca gave me something far deeper. He drove me to a quiet part of the city, into a building that looked old from the outside, but inside, on the second floor, was something I never expected. The old gym had been transformed. Spotlights lit up the corners like stars. Elegant fabric draped along the walls. A raised platform stood in the center, the soft glow of overhead lighting dancing off the polished pole he'd had installed. The speakers were set up perfectly, and the moment I stepped in, my own music began to play, like it knew I had arrived. It was the club, my sanctuary, but it was mine alone now. I turned slowly in the room, stunned. Every detail, every single detail, was perfect. He had recreated the only space where I felt free, and he had done it just for me. I turned to him, overwhelmed. "Luca." He held out his hand, not saying a word. I took it, and as our palms touched, I understood what he was offering. Not just a gift, not just admiration, but the clearest invitation I'd ever received. Be yourself, right here,
Right now. So I did.
I walked to the stage, the music rising. I closed my eyes and let my body move, not for a crowd this time, not for money, not for escape, but for him. For the boy who had become a man, who saw me in a way no one else did. Who remembered me when I had forgotten myself. Every twist of my hips, every reach of my arms, it was all gratitude, all emotion, all truth. When I opened my eyes at the end, he was still watching, not with hunger, not with confusion,
But with awe.
and in that moment, under the soft glow of 1,000 imagined lights, I realized something profound. He had built this space for me, but in doing so, he had also built something else. A door neither of us knew how to close. As the last notes of the music faded into the still air, I stood breathless on the stage. The room was quiet, save for the soft hum of the lights. My chest rose and fell, still caught in the rhythm, still caught in him, his eyes, his silence, his presence. Luca stepped forward. There was no applause, no words, just the sound of his slow, deliberate steps across the wooden floor, and the weight of something unspoken growing heavier between us, with every inch he closed. I stayed where I was, still in the spotlight, still caught in that dreamlike space between performance and reality. And then he was in front of me. Close. Too close. His hands were at his sides, tense, unsure. But his eyes were filled with something quiet and beautiful and terrifying. "You have no idea," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "how long I've wanted to give you this. A place, a moment, where no one could diminish you." I didn't move. I couldn't. "Everyone wants a piece of you," he continued. "But no one's ever just watched you, without taking." I swallowed, my throat dry. "And you?" I just wanted to give. The silence between us pulsed like a heartbeat. And then, slowly, like the world had narrowed into this single moment, he lifted a hand and gently brushed a strand of hair from my cheek. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't part of the performance. It was something far deeper than either of us had planned. "I've never seen anything more beautiful," he whispered. My lips parted, but no sound came. Because that's when it happened. He leaned in, tentative, almost like he was giving me the chance to stop him. But I didn't. I couldn't. My heart was already racing, my breath shallow, and every fiber of me was alive with sensation. I closed my eyes, and then his lips touched mine.
Soft.
Uncertain. Reverent. It wasn't rushed or hungry. It was a question, an offering, a truth long buried beneath years of roles and rules. It was the kiss of someone who had watched quietly for far too long. Someone who had waited, not for the right moment, but for the real one. When we pulled apart, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to, because that kiss had already said everything. That we had crossed a line, that there was no going back, and that somehow, despite the world we came from, the roles we were given, this here was the one place where we both felt free.